live after if you're ready to get started. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Clerk, we are ready.
Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dean Hennenlang, Clerk to the Franklin County Board of Commissioners. I just want to remind everyone that this is a public meeting and is being recorded. If you have called in to today's conference, please use *6 to mute your line. Otherwise, you are able to mute and unmute yourself throughout the course of the meeting. I'd remind everyone that since it is a video conference, if your video is turned on, be cognizant of that. And just remember that as a public meeting, we ask for decorum. And if you're unable to maintain decorum, we do have the option to remove you from the meeting. Otherwise, I'm sure that Deputy Smith will take good care of everyone. So have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Hennenlang. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm County Deputy Administrator Keena Smith. Welcome to our third and last in a series of Board of Commissioners Small Minority and Women Business Owners listening sessions. In response to the coronavirus pandemic, these listening sessions are being held to hear directly from our most vulnerable business owners about how they are managing through the COVID-19 challenges and opportunities, what they need right now, and their hopes for the future. What they share with us will be used to inform policy decisions that we make at the Franklin County Board of Commissioners and County Administration going forward. Today, our topic is the impact the crisis has had on the supply chain and how supporting buy local initiatives can help small businesses during these unprecedented times and beyond. Of course, we will hear from several small business owners about their experience and thoughts. We're also going to hear from a not-for-profit executive who's going to share how COVID-19 has impacted the local food supply chain and the benefits of buy local. I'd like to thank our commissioners for joining us today, along with County Administrator Ken Wilson, as well as Tamara Howard and Jessica Sullivan, policy managers from Commissioner Boyce's office, Mike Cochran, policy manager from Commissioner Marilyn Brown's office, and Kevin Pangrace, policy manager from Commissioner President John O'Grady's office. And to start, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Boyce to say a few words.
Sorry, great, thank you, Deputy Administrator Smith. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited about the conversation that we're having. What we know for sure is that as we grow our economy and come out of the COVID-19 and even the unrest environment that we've experienced over the last few weeks, it will be the small businesses that are the lifeline to the growth of our economy. And embedded in that are the minority and women-owned businesses that will fuel what we believe to be the most important and growing part of our economic sector. That being said, we've got to do a better job on understanding how we can create the best platform for those businesses to be successful. What a lot of people don't know about me is that I'm sort of a serial entrepreneur myself. I've lost count of the number of small businesses that I have started and sold, or started and closed, or whatever. That being said, I know the challenges that you face. I know what it's like to walk into an office and be a minority provider of some resource or service and not have the same type of access that others may have. I know what it's like for your business to be doubted, or to have requirements in place that have no real relevant impact on the service or resource that you're providing, yet it eliminates you from competing for the business. I know what it's like to not have a chance to lead a project when you've had experience or other projects or a track record, and yet they still say you're not qualified. At Franklin County, with my colleagues, John O'Grady and Marilyn Brown, who've been just tremendous partners in this conversation, we believe that we are turning the dial, we're moving the needle, however you want to look at it, at providing access to our business resources at Franklin County. And we believe that's a catalyst to the future. If we can lead the way as Franklin County, so will other surrounding counties be able to learn from our investment and growth. I was reading recently a McKinsey report that illustrated that women and minority-owned small businesses are the catalyst to growth across the country. And so it just makes logic sense that Franklin County would invest in this segment of our entrepreneurs and try to grow this resource best we can. I think the last couple of months, we've been overexposed, perhaps not overexposed, but overexposed to a conversation around moving the needle as it specifically relates to race. When I say overexposed, I mean that I feel like the media can sometimes exploit the conversation so that you lose focus on the page that we're turning or the chapter that we're beginning to write. But this is where most of you come in. And I know Director Schimmer is on here, Marlise Wicker is on here, Keena Smith is on here. And these are folks at Franklin County who've been charged and are being charged with it, not charged with the crime, but charged with this mission. And more importantly, being held accountable for our direction and our work. And that's where the rubber meets the road. I was talking to a recent client, and actually I was talking to them they were asking me some advice with regards to a policy matter. And they're no longer my client, but they were. But I told them the story that I can remember years ago trying to call on them. My profession away from politics is investment banking, so finance, license, securities, and all that. So I was calling on them as an investment banker, and I was telling them how getting into Hamilton County. I just told the client I didn't mean to do that, but anyways, getting into Hamilton County was impossible. You couldn't even get a meeting to talk about selling bonds or refinancing or restructuring their debt portfolio. Today, that environment's very different. You can get a meeting, you can present your credentials, and more importantly, you've got an opportunity to provide work if you can show that you can get the job done. And that's really what we're all asking for, right? We're all asking for the opportunity to compete for business. We're asking for the opportunity to perform with those opportunities. And so hopefully that's what we're doing here at Franklin County. I believe this is a different Franklin County than it was even just a few years ago. I know I called on Franklin County too as an investment banker and didn't always feel I was met with open arms. That day has changed. I believe now more than ever, this county has instituted as part of our value system a notion of inclusion and of sharing that prosperity. And my colleagues and I understand very deeply that as the tide rises, all boats shall rise too. And it's important that we invest and provide those boats with the resources to float, be successful, and most importantly, thrive. And so I'm really excited about the conversation. I won't be able to stay on. I've got another Zoom call town hall meeting that I'm doing here shortly. And so I have a team of people in here that will be getting started on. We're talking about race relations and health, wealth, and other issues, challenged in minority communities. And so I'll be jumping on that call shortly. But I'll stay on because I do want to hear some of the voices of our entrepreneurs, my fellow entrepreneurs out there in the struggle to provide great resources or services to our community. And so I want to just wish you good luck on behalf of my colleagues, Marilyn Brown and John O'Grady. I'm not sure if they're on or not, but I know if they were here, they would say they value and appreciate this conversation. And most importantly, value and appreciate the service and business that you bring to Central Ohio. So thanks for having me today. Deputy Administrator, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And yes, we are joined by the wonderful Commissioner Marilyn Brown, and I would love to offer her the opportunity to greet each of you if she would like to do that.
Welcome, and I'm just thrilled to listen to all of you. I recognize some of you, and I'm just thrilled to be on this call. We do so much with our small businesses, and this is a great opportunity for us to just listen to what you have to say. And I'm just happy to be on the call. And I will be here for the remainder of the call. So if there's anything that comes up, please feel free to ask. And if I don't know the answer, somebody on our team certainly will. You've got some great people on this call, and what you do is so very important. Small business is the key to our success in the county. So thank you all for what you're doing.
Commissioner. And now I'll turn it over to Jim Shimmer, who will introduce, Jim is our director of Franklin County's Economic and Development and Planning Department, and he's going to introduce our first speaker. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Keena. I just want to thank you guys to yourself and Marlise for putting these together. They've really turned out to be good, and I've actually gotten to be friends with a lot of the people that I don't even know personally through this effort. So it's really great to see all these faces, and we are really pleased to be able to present a really fine person for our lead speaker. Young Kim is with One Columbus, and he leads the research team there that he gathers and analyzes information about the Columbus region's economy. And he has been engaged in that role I'm pretty darn near the beginning of the advent of the organization, but he's got such a deep content knowledge of both standard and non-traditional businesses. He's an expert at realizing and understanding what business and demographic data can do for communities, and he's been doing that for all of Central Ohio now. It's been a pleasure, and I was looking through his resume, and the one thing I want to talk a little bit about is just to kind of give you a little backdrop. Jung has a MS in Regional and Urban Studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and he got a BA in Sociology and Urban Studies from Northwestern University. So academically, incredibly well-qualified person. We are lucky in Central Ohio to have the caliber of such a research mind here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jung Kim. Thanks, Jung.
Thanks, Jim. So I'm going to share my screen. Hey, Keena, I'm getting a message that the host disabled participant screen sharing. But yeah, there we go.
Mr. Kim, I apologize. If you give me just 1 second, we will get it fixed for you.
Sure. I'll start talking and just let me know, Dean, when it's fixed. So Keena and Marlise asked me to pack all that knowledge that Jim was talking about into a couple of slides in 5 minutes to cover supply chain impacts across industries. So that's going to be pretty high level. I'm sure the business owners and other speakers on this call will be able to cover a lot of the gaps that I'm going to leave. But I think we're ready now. All right, so can everyone see that okay? Great. So this is a very high level view of what's happened across supply chains. Going back to February, which seems like ages ago now for us. Initially, the organizations here that were feeling things were really the manufacturing companies, the retailers that were starting to see impacts out of suppliers in China. So yeah, even then, things were somewhat buffered by the timing of the Lunar New Year there. So February wasn't too bad yet, although domestically within China, there were impacts for the businesses and consumers there. What had happened was a lot of the companies here, whether you're talking about a Big Lots or one of the major apparel retailers, they had stocked up quite a bit in advance of that Lunar New Year. So they were okay for the start of it. And if you recall some of the news back then, the US was actually shipping PPE to China to assist with their COVID fight. So this was before we were feeling the impacts. Obviously, a few weeks later, starting in the second week of March, states here were starting to lock down. And it's been pretty fascinating from a general economic standpoint how unique this has been. with a lot of recessions, they start from industrial activity, financial activity, and consumers like us may not feel the impacts until maybe a year in to actually when the recession started. And this time, we're talking about the street front retail, mom and pops, right away feeling that impact. So that's unique how sudden all that was. It also affected, obviously, the work environment of a lot of companies here. Manufacturers, in our region and elsewhere, were fighting like crazy to get essential status, right? And some did and some didn't, depending on what they were doing, but that had a significant impact on the workforce too. I have on this slide some note about what's going on with the freight capacity, which is impacting things. If to the extent any of the businesses on this call rely on air shipments or even on a consumer level, that's been affected. I know I'm not getting any magazines internationally on time these days, but part of that is just the collapse in air travel, the loss of that cargo belly space, even on passenger planes. That's affected the freight capacity and increased those international air freight costs to Europe, Asia by 10 times or greater. So we got this combination of workplace shutdowns, consumer demand shutdowns, and in mid-April, over time, what's happened was, we saw that demand in essential healthcare products, the demand for basic non-perishable goods at the consumer level, and slowly, week by week, within April, you saw other things come back. So the grocery retailers, like a Kroger, they talked about fresh goods coming back, right? Everyone was kind of done with the frozen foods and the basic stock up there. Some people were piling up on work-related electronics or software. For those of us with kids, a lot of children's stuff to keep them occupied and educated. The stimulus checks, that starts to go out in mid-April, that made a significant difference. So you saw other retail sectors come back, like the quick service restaurants. Wendy's reported their week-by-week progress in April, coming back almost to normal by the end of that month. Some people were buying home electronics, other stuff for the kind of the home and garden outdoors. It replaces maybe some of the travel and other things that we didn't get to do. We don't get to do now. And then finally, e-commerce of non-essential goods are also starting to come back. So out of this process, we've had a lot of bumps on the road. On the supply side, I mentioned China, but then we had factory shutdowns in Europe, a little bit ahead of the US, and then Mexico, a little bit behind the US, and that's affected various industries, especially automotive, where the supply chains are so globalized. But even some of these other sectors, even some construction supplies were affected by shutdowns abroad. Domestically, we've seen what's happened with some of the meat plants, where a lot of workers are working close together, and the COVID outbreaks that have happened there, and the resulting beef shortages in particular, how that's impacted grocery retailers, fast food restaurants, and even other restaurants too. So it's it's looking like a bumpy road ahead, even as the reopening continues. We're seeing COVID cases rise, especially in the south and west of this country. But then even here in Ohio in the last few days, the cases are creeping back up again. So it's the kind of thing where, maybe we've gotten through the worst of it, but there are kind of little fires here and there that are going to continue to disrupt the lives of our employers and residents. So what lies ahead? A lot of this is hard to forecast what's going to happen. To the extent that the employment environment continues to be weak, to the extent that retail sales, especially bricks and mortar and non-essential goods, if that continues to be weak, that will have ramifications for the rest of the economy. We're all waiting to see what's going to happen from the federal level on down in terms of new stimulus from the government, any extended unemployment benefits, other policy measures. We're not totally sure what's coming down the pike, although there's a lot of talk about different programs. And then even from a retailer standpoint, in terms of our lives, how do you plan for back to school in the holiday season in December when we have no idea what's really coming? So finally, I'll touch upon a real quick look at what supply chains in the future will look like. I think the key word here is resiliency. Part of this, but not all of this, is localization, onshoring some international production back to the US, or maybe national production down to Ohio, local. Maybe there are some opportunities there. But not all of that's going to happen that way. Supply chain diversity might mean just a whole variety of foreign countries where products are being sourced. But then the other part of this is this idea of a network approach. So if a plant in Mississippi goes down and the plant in Mexico or across the world in Thailand help cover that. So I think especially from our speakers around food and some of the other industries, that small business perspective, I think this is going to be a key topic as to, how do we make our supply chain stronger? Part of that is going to result in local opportunities and just maybe getting rid of some of the inefficiencies that we've seen in industries like food, where things are so nationalized and overextended and in some ways distorted by subsidies. To try to fix those, that may yield significant improvements ahead. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it on to Keena.
Thank you. Jim?
Hey, Young, I just really quickly question, do you see the concept of this localization really sort of trickling down to small business owners in Franklin County?
I guess it really depends on what they're doing, what industry they're in. If it is a small retailer in apparel, a lot of that is going to be more about the diversification, where the products are sourced. We know amongst the big apparel retailers, over the past 2-3 years, many of them have cut by more than half their dependency on China. So, but that means, more imports from Vietnam or other places. For something like food, it probably is more looking at national down to the regional around the state, maybe more local than that, but just, trying to address the inefficiencies we've seen around whether it's beef or milk or eggs. You have shortages on one side where people are desperate to get food, right? And then on the other, farmers are throwing some of these products away. So just kind of fixing those kinds of imbalances.
Thank you. Open up the floor for questions from commissioners or county administration. County Administrator Wilson, Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Boyce, or any of our policy managers. Do you all have any questions of Mr. Kim? Commissioner Boyce?
I was just going to say, very good presentation. Thank you so much. I think with the current COVID-19 environment, there are a number of opportunities that could be presented post-pandemic environment with regards to supply chain and other resources. What's the right way to say this? How do you see that as part of a direction that the county should begin to invest in and push for, given your presentation? Do you see that as something where we should sort of really zero in on?
There may be opportunities. I think part of the challenge right now is figuring out what those are. For months now, since the lockdown started, Jobs Ohio and ourselves at One Columbus, we've been trying to figure out what the reshoring, for example, would entail. And, a lot of that is really down to things like cost of labor, cost of transport. Are the items bulky or pretty easy to ship? And so I think the opportunities are going to be here and there amongst all that, not reshoring or localization across the board. But I think once we have more of that figured out, and as we hear from our economic development clients, how they're looking at things, I think that's when we can really involve Franklin County as well as other communities around our region in these discussions.
Deputy Administrator Smith.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Administrator Wilson, please.
If I may ask one question of Mr. Kim, I would like to know, sir, are there any analyses being done in advance of what could be a second wave late into the third quarter of this year regarding the resiliency of regional economies to be purposefully shut down again as they were when this pandemic started?
Yeah, a big part of handling any future waves is it's really going to be around, hopefully make some more progress in contact tracing and those kinds of measures. Because, as you seem to be implying, it would be pretty rough to try to shut things down completely again. So to the extent that we can isolate the clusters and control the virus, in a localized fashion while other activities continue to move, that would help a lot. Hopefully all the steps that companies and us as individuals have taken, that will help. But yeah, it is going to be a challenging environment for a lot of us.
Thank you. I just asked that question because there are several states that are seeing a high number of cases, such as Florida and Texas. And those were some of the first states to reopen sectors of the economy. And no matter how strong of the infrastructure you've built, I don't know if economies are resilient enough to be shut down again and then rebuild from that point after the public health threat is minimized.
Right, and those kinds of examples, I think we've seen what the state governments did versus how the private sector, or definitely what we see in the news with larger employers, how they responded. So you take an example like Boeing, they were starting up production in the state of Washington several weeks earlier than resuming it in South Carolina, just because of their concern about COVID, even though South Carolina made a push to reopen earlier. So I think Ohio is different because we've had a much more responsive administration at the top, and I think that's more aligned with how a lot of businesses are looking at things. But where you have that difference, it's going to be a bit of a checkerboard pattern, right, in terms of who's responding best to the COVID outbreak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Appreciate the presentation. Thank you, County Administrator Wilson, for the questions. Now we will move on to and thank you, Jim. Now we will move on to hear from our small business owners. I'm also going to hand off MC responsibilities to Marlise Wicker.
Thank you, Keena, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. I am the Small and Emerging Business Coordinator with Franklin County. In my position, I'm to promote, improve, and increase the participation of small, minority, women, disadvantaged, and veteran business enterprises in the county through competitive and non-competitive bid process. This afternoon, we will hear from a few entrepreneurs and their stories on the effect of COVID-19 in their businesses, challenges, and needs. So let's begin. Halima is the president of Green Office Supply. Halima, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Marlise. I'd like to thank Commissioner Rice and the county representatives for allowing me to speak to everyone today and be a part of this conversation. I started my business, it was Green Office Furniture Solutions originally. We've kind of morphed after 12 years of business. We have 3 divisions. We have our commercial interiors, as well as our supply division and technology. Before COVID hit in March, we were working on a large project with a government agency in the Cleveland area. It's a construction project. That project, we were told initially was an essential project, but pretty quickly we were told that it would be shut down. And actually, we were expecting to have the project going again as of June 22nd, but it's still on hold. In addition to that, we were on a state contract with Ohio to provide supplies. And one of the biggest issues we had early on was the supply chain disruptions. We found that our large suppliers, wholesale distributors did not have product, did not have PPE, and they too were shutting down, so we couldn't get those resources to our customers. So early on, we had one person that we completely had off the payroll. Everyone else pretty much went to part-time. And then what we did find is that we quickly shifted focus from our furnishings and interior supplies to just trying to find some resources with PPE and other things that clients needed. I did apply for the EIDL loan as well as applied for grants. Then I applied for EIDL again because they had restructured the way it was done. I did receive EIDL. I also applied for the PPP loan and the Goldman Sachs program because I'm alumni there, and I was able to secure the loan actually June 12th. So we were able to go back into our office space just a week ago, actually 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, and I was able to get an intern to help us through the summer through the program that the state of Ohio has. We also got very creative and reached out to our resources. In addition to being a woman minority business, I am also a service disabled veteran business. And so we reached out to other small businesses who were either still operating or some of them were not at the time, and had conversations about, hey, is there something that you might be doing or ways that you are pivoting that can help us supply these products to our customers, local resources. So we started to create a supply chain that was based off local resources to provide PPE solutions. Some of the things that we're focused on now as it relates to commercial spaces is doing re-entry plans with companies that are trying to reopen. And so we're helping them to come up with viable plans that will help implement some safety practices, some supplies and things that need to be in place as they start to have people return to the workspace. And that's in anything from sneeze guards and thermal cameras that automatically take temperatures, just to name a few things, signage. Also helping them to have the conversations as an organization around what post-COVID re-entry to their workspace looks like and how quickly to do that, and also gauge some of those things. Luckily, the National Furniture Trade Show that we're normally at in June continued virtually with a lot of conversation around what's happening in public spaces. It's been offered to us from a more global view. So we're able to see what's happening in some areas where they actually reopened earlier than Ohio, or maybe they haven't opened yet. They're looking at some practices and things to put in place. And so we're trying to find we're gathering information from that to try to help us as we navigate, especially understanding there may be another wave that people need to navigate around to try to continue to keep businesses open. So it's been an important thing for us to work with some small businesses and other large businesses, to say the least, to localization piece has been very critical in keeping our doors open and keeping us operating, as well as receiving those funds that we did get as of this month. And I think that's all I really have to share. And I open and invite questions if you have any.
Thank you, Halima. Do we have any questions from our
You're welcome.
commissioners or county administration for Halima? Okay. Seeing no questions at this time, we'll move on to our next small business owner, Melissa.
Thank you.
You're
Marlise,
welcome. Thank you. Yes,
Marlise,
Kina.
I have a question for Halima.
Sure.
Halima, you mentioned that you are I heard a couple different things that you do, but mainly you're supply and it's green office supply.
So our primary business focus is in sustainability, and so when it's commercial interior products. So it's anything from flooring to furniture to wall coverings, but anything that's pretty much going to be on the inside of finishing a commercial space, and that's signage as well. So a lot of what we're doing as it relates to the entry is retrofitting spaces to allow additional safety barriers. And so actually we're working with a local small business to create product that can be retrofitted in spaces. So some of the things that we're looking at is high touch point areas, doorknobs and things like that. Actually to be able to develop product that can be provided in those spaces where you can retrofit items instead of people having to replace 1,000 door handles in a public area.
And you're breaking up just a little bit, but I did want to ask you if you have, I read recently where the state of Ohio sent a letter to vendors basically asking them to cut their contracts or their by about 15%. And I'm wondering if you were impacted by that and how that will impact your business going forward.
Sure. So yes, I did receive that letter. Actually, what I did was contacted one of our large wholesale distributors that we work with. As I understand it, actually today, probably during this call, they were on a call with the state of Ohio, asking questions on behalf of my small business and others that have kind of put things to one place as them being our voice. So as of right now, I mean, that would tremendously impact our business. It's very difficult right now, especially working with local resources. We're not getting the prices that they would get out of China or somewhere. And it's, you know, it's one of those things where if we were trying to back out of 15%, it could be a huge financial impact for our business to try to do that. So as of right now, I'm not sure if it solidifies, but there is conversation happening directly with the state. As far as I understand, that will address how that will impact small businesses.
I want to keep an eye on that for sure. Thank you, Halima. Thank you, Marlise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Melissa from Yaziri Enterprises. Thank you, Melissa, for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner Brown, and the whole entire Board of Commissioners staff. Thank you for this opportunity. I also like to thank Marlise and Keenan for really doing what they said they were going to do, is get out there and make sure that small businesses would have an opportunity to participate in part of the process of bidding and get some business. So certainly you've been a lifeline to my business. I think it's very interesting, Mr. Kim, I agree with everything he said. My background, actually, I spent 24 years with Kroger all through college and graduate school, was in charge of, I've been a buyer. I actually set up their fuel operation when they decided to get into that business. And so that's what I did. And then I spent another 4 years with BP Oil prior to going out on my own. I've designed things, sold it to Walmart, and that was actually what I thought I was going to do in 2008 when the recession hit. And here we go again with another blow. But my business is promotional products, as well as we have a retail Greek side, which ties into the promotional business, because a lot of times the fraternities and sororities will actually call us to do their large conferences. However, with COVID, all of those things were pretty much wiped out. We were looking at 30% increase over last year. Each year we continue to grow in the area of promotional products. And we just saw it wiped out in one swoop. By the 15th, I had, back in January, I expanded my business. We took a lease to get another part of the building, and we actually ended up giving that back based on COVID. Everything was gone. Some of my large clients were Columbus City Schools. The conferences are gone with the city of Columbus. You know, any face-to-face pretty much wiped out of everything we were doing, and all the gains were just kind of diminished in almost a month. I did apply for the PPP money very quickly. My bank responded, and I'm in that kind of catch-22 that I like to think that maybe the federal government didn't look at. I use 1099 employees, retired teachers. They already have their insurance, so that works very well with me. However, I don't take a salary. And then the catch was that we didn't qualify because 1099 employees or contractors, rather, they're not employees, could be working for other people. My pushback is that, and it doesn't matter if I push back, but anyway, my pushback is these accounts are based on what I went and did. I went and talked to the client to bring the business in. They're just a conduit to processing paper. And so I really thought that was a major miss, because there's a lot of people in my situation that, you know, weren't able to get that PPP money. I did get the grant from the SBA. It was supposed to be a quick $10,000. I didn't get quite that. And basically, that's all that I was able to get so far. I have applied for some grants. I did one for the city, but what I found is, again, I think another small miss might be that if you allow people who already have PPP money and they're getting it, and then I'm in the pool, that money goes away pretty quickly. So it would have been nice if somebody thought, okay, if you haven't received anything, you go first, and then whatever's left over. Those are just things that I thought of on my own that I thought would make the situation go a little better or spread the wealth in this case. I was able to pivot pretty quickly based on previous experience, and so we were able to get PPE products fairly quickly. However, the challenge was the supply chain was broke, supply and demand, prices accelerated, and that's hard to get purchasing people to understand. I'm not trying to gouge you, it's just the sanitizer now has gone up. The other thing I learned through the supply chain is if, for example, sanitizer, if they were producing, a manufacturer was producing 20 different varieties, they decided not to do that. So just concentrate on one or two. Some opportunity I thought through the purchasing would really be just to quickly make up your mind what you want. And that allow us to working on sourcing this product to quickly get it and lock it down, because once it goes up, if we don't respond, it's gone. So again, I know I'm talking fast. I was trying to get it all in, but those have been some of the things that we have done. We also recently, since there's so many people now in the PPE market, we decided to do some COVID packs for children. And we actually presented that to the Department of Neighborhoods for the city. And I think they're going to try to pilot something when they do this big giveaway. I think the county is a part of that. And so we put together some COVID packs that would be wash your hands, concentrating on wash your hands, That is twofold, not only for COVID, but also this lead, it could be used for the lead initiative that HUD is focusing on, and is teaching kids or reinforcing the behavior of washing your hands. So I'm not sure how much more time I have, but that's been one of our big focus to continue to pivot, because this is going to be for the long run. For small businesses, even though the doors open tomorrow for Columbus City School, it's going to be a while before they're ready to move forward and start doing the orderings that they were doing before. So it's like losing a customer. You lose a customer, it takes twice as much to get them back. This is the same situation. It's going to be 4 to 6 months before people can ramp up. And if there's another wave, you know, we can be back, we can regress again. So that's been my experience. Don't want to go through it again. It's like a session, but at least we knew we were going to recover with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, for sharing your story. Do we have any questions for Melissa? Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner Brown.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Administrator Wilson?
No questions.
Deputy County Administrator.
Just really quickly, Melissa, I want to make sure that you know about the Small Business Recovery Fund that the city and county have put together for that, and make sure you have the information to access. Make sure you have the information to be able to access those dollars if you think appropriate for your business.
And Marlise did send me something. She's been very informative of passing the information out. And as I get it, I pass it out to other people, other small businesses.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to Mabel Diaz, who is the owner of, is it Santiago Supermarket?
Hi, yes.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Good, thank you. I want to thank everyone to give me the opportunity to talk about this topic. Like you said, my name is Mabel Diaz. We are coming from a background. My parents are Dominican, from the Dominican Republic. So we are, you know, from a minority group that want to start a business. So like you said, we come from Santiago Supermarket. Inside our supermarket, we have a restaurant, like a mini tacos Mexican restaurant, and we also have an MSB, which is sending money to their countries, cashing their checks, stuff like that. So we haven't been in business for 4 years. It was really, really overwhelming when everything started. We didn't know what was going on. Everybody's buying all of the products, going crazy about buying rice, beans, everything that they found in the store. All the tortillas that we sell, it was like sold out. We were selling like 20 cases a day, and it was massive, crazy. The most of the problem that we are facing, we're still facing it since the start of March, is that all of our shipment comes in, but they're not complete. The other thing is price. Price is going up twice or 3 times more, and it's like too much for us to control. And then, like Melissa mentioned, people think, or customers think, that we're gouging, and it's so difficult. We had so many complaints, and we tried to explain to the customers, but some people don't understand the chain of supply. If other people don't have the product, or maybe they have it but they want to take advantage of selling the product, all the product that they have because of demand, then it's small businesses that get hurt. The other thing is, we also got affected because of the having to buy so many times, so much often. Our cash flow got affected. So we were able to get a PPP loan from our local bank to be able to cover our payroll, to pay our employees who were working extra hours, trying to make sure our merchandise was stocked up. We even had a week we had to close the business because it was so overwhelming. We were getting shipments every 2-3 days, but then it was like leaving through the door like crazy. So we decided to close for a few days, so we were able to kind of take it easy on the store, be able to stock everything back up and have a better service for the customers. The main products that many of you may know that actually went pretty quick was rice, beans, milk, eggs, and all of that. The prices went crazy for a couple weeks. Now it's getting better, especially the meat. I'm pretty sure most of you guys saw in the supermarket crazy prices or out of stock too. So now it's getting better. Most of the prices for the meat is coming down. It also affects, people low income. If they don't have a job, most of them that are in our customers, they work in restaurants, they work in factories, they work in construction. So everything was stopped, suspended. So it really affected us, having seen all these people. We were even afraid that they were going to go back to their countries and it was going to be a really, really worse mess than it is. But things are getting better. I'm really hopeful that everything starts to come back up because there's so many businesses that were hurt for this. I don't know if you guys have any questions. That's mostly of our experience in our business. Truly hope everyone it gets back on their feet.
Hey, Maybell, this is Jim Schimmer. I was really struck by the fact that, this is a focus and discussion on, the supply chain. And, you go out to your vendors, but only, instead you're expecting a full truck, instead you get a half truck. How do you handle that, like, just at the moment? I mean, is it, you just stock what you have and just call it a day?
Yeah, it was pretty hard to, see all of our shelves emptied out, and like we will like that. I mentioned like our cash flow was being affected because of the same thing. Let's say I ordered this twice this week, I had to order again. Like our cash flow was like hurt so much that I had to pay them ahead of time or pay them before the schedule shipment was supposed to be. So it is really, 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 really hard to keep up with that.
Has it eased any?
Now it's getting better. So let's say, for example, I make an order because most of our vendors are from Chicago, because that's where most of those companies are based on. So just to mention one of them, it's called Banner. They are a huge company that provide a lot of products from Mexico or Central America or South America. And so basically, if I made an order for $5,000, for example, they would sell me $2,500 or even $1,300. So it was like, what I'm gonna do? It's so crazy. So try other companies, and it was the same. Like they had all the products sold out because of the demand.
Well, thank you for hanging in there and making it work, because it's really important. Obviously, food is a really critical component of how we live our lives, right? So
Right.
you provided frontline service, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
A quick question for you. We heard about price gouging, or at least customers feeling as if that might be happening to them. And you, both you and Melissa, and maybe even Halima, are saying that, this is just a result of what's happening in the supply chain. Is there, and it may be something that you need to kind of think about, noodle on for a minute, but I'm wondering to Administrator Wilson and Mr. Kim, we talked about the fact that this can be kind of cyclical as far as another wave coming, and we don't know kind of, what to expect. I'm wondering if maybe there are ways that government, the county specifically, I won't speak for others, but may be able to help you all get your message out to the public when these things are starting to kind of have a chain reaction, so to speak? Just something in my head as far as how can we be of service and helping to level those customer expectations across the region when we know that this might be something that they're going to be seeing and feeling.
Deputy Administrator Long, I was thinking about, Deputy Administrator Smith, I was thinking about the fact that the second wave is so dependent upon the behavior of our consumers. And the best way that our consumers can support small business is by keeping social distancing and wearing a mask when they are in establishments. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about how could we partner that wearing a mask is business friendly, because wearing masks decrease the rate of transmission. It protects both the clerks that work in stores at the retail level, and it also is a two-way street because individuals is permissive whether they wear a mask when they come into a small business, but the small business staff have to wear a mask. So let's protect each other and decrease the likelihood or how severe a second wave could be. That's like something that's real, simple that can be done. And I think we gotta collectively think about mitigation strategies, and I think that's why the PPE grant program is so important in the latest installment that both the county and city put in place in order for small businesses to have that PPE that they need, because that's something that's going to be vital over, I predict, the next 24 months.
On the question about how to communicate on rising costs, there is more and more data coming out that's showing that this is a nationwide trend. So it's not just any single business here that's raising prices on basic items, especially. Granted, it can be a bit challenging to communicate data, but to the extent maybe that we can get local media to talk to some of the business here about this issue and get consumers to understand that, right now this is a fact of life. Cost of labor, hygiene across the supply chain is going up. And, unfortunately, some of the costs have to be borne by the consumer. So if there are ways to communicate that to the public through media and other channels, that would help a lot, I think.
And there's a lot of fear amongst our consumers. That's what led to so much hoarding of meat, for example. Local retailers had to limit how many packages of meat that someone could purchase on sale, or hand sanitizer, cleaning products. If you automatically are going to raise up the price for your fellow person if you take more than your fair share, because when as Ms. Diaz pointed out, if you're getting half of your shipment in, and you get half of your shipment in, and everybody's taking a disproportionate share of that and going home with it, the system is even further set back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
We talk about, you think about the mentality of the action of we're in this together. But if I see hand sanitizer and there's 10 containers of it and I take 5 of them home, it's not looking out for the next person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why retailers have started limiting. You see that all the time now, right? One per person, one package of toilet paper per family, those kinds of things. So, thank you.
We haven't talked, Deputy Administrator Smith, about commercial rent. In our last listening session, commercial rent was a topic of conversation. And also, we also talked about not being able to control inventory, where the suppliers were doing the opposite of what we just heard. Well, getting a half of the shipment, or business is receiving too much of what they can't sell. Because I'd like to know if any of our small business professionals would like to talk about those topics, if they're impacted at all by that.
That is something, Melissa, I know that you rent, and since you're doing the promotional items, are you finding yourself in that situation at all?
Well, I was fortunate. I wrote a letter to, after returning the other part of my building, so it was 2 units and they would cut it out and we could walk back and forth. My person was very understanding. And then I actually did write her a letter to see if she would consider reducing my rent for 2 months. You know, I asked for just 2 months, and put together a plan of action and included that how I was going to be able to recover, because the first thing they're thinking of, if you're asking for a reduction and all of this is impacting your business, how do you know you're going to be on your feet and be able to pay? And I put together a plan and she accepted it. So she gave me 2 months of, of a rent reduction. And then starting next month, I would pay full rent. And then she did give me the first option, once the other tenant moved out, that I would still be back in line to have that other side of the building. So I was pretty fortunate, but I did put together a really good action plan that I don't think she could really dispute. This was what was coming on. I had been talking to her because I was watching the news. And so even in January, I said something about, hey, COVID, how this could impact the rest of her business. And I don't think that she thought it could until March 15th, when she started getting other calls from people saying, what do I do if I can't pay my rent? So I was really fortunate in that situation to have her allow me to just pay half price.
Thank you.
And then if I can add, I didn't have an issue. Well, I did continue to pay the rent for our space, but I did have the option if for some reason the idle or PPE or some of these other things did not come through, we could discuss an arrangement. I am, though, considering right now my lease ends in October, and so I am thinking about what option I might have as opposed to holding onto the space, considering maybe co-working space, for example. But that is also assuming that those spaces will be open and available should something happen, a second wave. So that's the other issue.
Thank you. Thank you both. Now we'll hear from Nancy Tidwell, the owner of NRT and Associates.
Okay. Thank you to all of you for inviting me to participate. My business, NRT and Associates, is a small business, but I work for and advocate for minority and female businesses in construction. So my work is very narrowly focused. It is no secret that minority-owned businesses have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. In fact, it was reported that just this week, that between February and April, there was a 41% drop in Black business ownership, as opposed to 32% Hispanic and 17% white. My feeling is that what we need to do today is no different than what we should always be doing, or should have been doing in the past, perhaps. Even with the construction boom of the last couple of years, minority-owned businesses have struggled. Decades of being left out of the process has really taken its toll on minority businesses in this community. Each time a major new construction project comes up or is announced with the claim that there will be new opportunities and new jobs, members of the minority community oftentimes ask the question, who will get those contract opportunities and who will get those jobs? Far too often, it's not us. And now with COVID-19, chances of small minority business survival have lessened even further. We've been talking about the loans available, and I heard just in the news yesterday, I believe it was, that of 500 minority companies surveyed, 12% have received the loan amount requested, and 2/3 have yet to receive any help at all. So there is some good news, and the good news here in Columbus, there is some good news, and I know the county is interested in this project, but there's some good news that there's evidence of movement for change. And so soon you will begin to hear about how small minority local businesses are being utilized on the Columbus Crew Stadium and training facility projects through joint ventures, mentoring, and subcontracting at levels commensurate with contractor resources, but with the intention of building individual contractor capacity. All of these methods are suggested and have been proven to work. Also, in addition to providing access to capital for small businesses, the Economic and Community Development Institute will soon implement plans for an incubator. And I know the county has some involved in that as well. But for minority contractors, and there have been a host of developers and contractors and large general contractors that are searching for ways to improve their diversity and inclusion efforts as a result of the recent focus on racial inequities. Clearly, there's a lot of work ahead of us as a community, but now is the time, and launching a campaign to utilize small, local, minority contractors in construction and in any other field is the right thing to do. But the success of such a campaign will really require more than just an announcement or setting a goal. It'll take time and, more importantly, resources. The dialogue must change, and our focus must be on what it will take to correct the inequities of the past and the unintended consequences of a pandemic. Marlies?
Sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button. Thank you, Nancy. Do we have any questions, commissioners, county administrator, or deputy county administrator for Nancy Tidwell?
I don't. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Now we'll move to Director Shimmer, if you can introduce. Yes, I'm sorry, Kina.
I just wanted to ask Nancy, as you work with construction, small minority and women-owned businesses, specifically Black businesses in construction, since construction was considered to be essential and most of it continued, some of these issues that you spoke about are pretty entrenched, I guess, is what you're sharing with us. And as far as some type of campaign around buying local, from your comments, are you kind of stressing that within any type of buy local support effort, that there should be something that is focused on minority and women-owned businesses specifically?
Oh, absolutely. And in particular, as I said, minority companies, because of the disproportionate effect of COVID and the practices of the past. We really need to help these businesses to grow. We have to remember that minority contractors today did not start at the same place as many of their competitors. So we have some catching up to do, and there's some work that we owe to that group of businesses to support them and to provide those resources that they need to grow.
Thank you. And as when we talk about buy local, and this might be a question. What time is it? Okay, I'm gonna not ask the question. And thank you, Nancy. We always do this. We run out of time all the time. It's like, we have questions, so I apologize. I will hold my question. If we have time at the end, Marlise, I will ask it. Nancy, so I hope you're still around. I know we need to get to Elise, so we don't run out of time. I'm
No problem.
Mike Cochran.
Director Shimmer.
Hey, Elise, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to announce or introduce to you Elise Chalmers, who is amazingly the founder of the Local Food Connection. This is something that she did in 2015 because she wanted to conveniently connect local food producers and buyers. Elise spends most of her time meeting with chefs and farmers to find out how they might be able to work together and how she might be able to actually make their day-to-day task a little easier. Elise has really been involved strongly with Franklin County in her role with Brian Estabrook, who is Franklin County's food planner and our local food council representative. But the food council is sort of a kind of, I don't know what I would say, it embodies the work that Elise has done, and I think, and what she thinks about. So with that, I'd like to turn the program over to her. Elise?
Thanks so much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me on this forum. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up? Okay. Yeah, so my background comes from working with farmers. I have a finance background, but working with farmers and some of their struggles, financial struggles, which trying to make a profit on a daily basis. Farmers are like any other small business. They have to wear all these hats, from growing to selling to collecting to delivering. And with all these struggles, having worked with them since 2010, I realized if we could take the off-farm work of selling, collecting, delivering off of their plate, they could concentrate on growing more. And that has so many other consequences. Better food for local communities like Columbus, more healthy food, because actually if you eat food that's closer to the harvest time, the nutritional value goes up tremendously. You get broccoli from a farm or spinach from a farm that was harvested the day before, it's 77% more nutrition than something that's been harvested 7 days before in California. So I mean, think about the impact on a daily basis to folks in Columbus if we can source locally. So it's not just, giving money back to the community, it is also a health issue. So working with farmers, we realized if we could take that off-farm work off of their plate, and for buyers as well, rather than a chef or a household having to go to one farm for their pork, another farm for their vegetables, another farm for their dairy, we created a one-stop shop, basically, like an online farmers market, think of it that way, for folks to go and buy locally, and being able to do in 10 minutes what they currently do when they go and buy at Sysco or US Foods from California, but they can do it with 100 local farms on that platform. So that's the model we were working with. What happened with, and what it is, and in 5 years, we went from 14 chefs and 14 farmers that were willing to work with us to 500 chefs and about 100 farms in the Ohio, Indiana, and Cincinnati and Kentucky area. This was, really the main thing then is price point, is making people understand that if you're going to buy from a smaller farm, they may not be as mechanized as a farm out in California. Because it's colder in the winter, growing tomatoes or growing lettuce in the winter can be done, but it's going to be a higher price point because you have to cover it, you have to heat it, you have to do all of that. So there's an education process in doing that. We've partnered with many people, Brian being one of them, to try to help get local food into different communities around Columbus. And we've partnered with a logistics company called Creation Gardens. So we work out of Franklinton, where there's a warehouse, and we run our local product out of those trucks. So that, again, we're trying to get efficiencies of larger scale distributors, but still putting local products into people's hands. So what happened in March, we work over the winter to crop plan with our farmers. And in March, when COVID hit, we were planning to sell to Cincinnati Public Schools, Columbus City Schools, University of Kentucky, OSU. All of these contracts went to hell. If your market is restaurants and schools, you can imagine what happened at the end of March. So we were really in a bind. Us, of course, we went down 80% in sales. But think about the farmers that had seeded, put some time into harvesting, weeding, and all of that. So we've done some pivoting to households. We had about 2,500 households that started buying from us. But one day of household deliveries going to about 60 households is about a quarter of what you get from one wholesale client. So it doesn't start to compensate. It's great, and we're happy to get this good food into household hands, but it doesn't start to compensate for the supplier as well as for us as a facilitator for the lack of sales. We were lucky to get a PPP grant, and so there were about I think 60% furlough plus us management team took 0 salaries so that we could keep people on staff. And with the PPP loan, we're starting to bring people back. And we're starting to see, of course, an increase in activity. We're up back to 50%, thankfully, because this is the season where corn is just coming in the next 2 weeks, tomatoes are coming in, all of the higher volume crops are coming in. And so the main threat to us today is a second surge. And that's why I hope to God that everyone continues to take the precautions they need to take, because it would be devastating to be short-sighted on that. So that I would think is probably our biggest threat today. What else can I say? I mean, I guess right now we are waiting to hear what OSU would like to do and how much they can source locally. As you all know, they have a mandate for 40% local supply, so local purchase for food. We are waiting to see how they can put that into place. They are under strict budget measures, as everyone else is right now, due to COVID. So we'll see how that impacts that 40% local mandate. Same thing with Capital University that we've talked to, the Crest Group, which is a large restaurant group that has been wonderful in terms of supporting local. What I'd like to say is we've created an infrastructure. I think Mr. Kim talked about this, can we in the future make ourselves more resistant and solid by having alternative logistics and supply chain infrastructure? We are doing that. That's exactly our goal, is to do that, because we realize that if it's more convenient to buy from California, people are going to buy from California. We have to make it as convenient to buy from Ohio as it is to buy from California. And we've done that. And partnering with larger logistics company makes it even more convenient. You can go and get your lemons and limes and go and get your local products at the same time. So that was one way I hope we can in the future and over the long term get the word out that local production is here and well, as long as we support it. It does mean that you've got to really look at the whole price of food and the economic cost. When you buy lettuce in a bag from Whole Foods or from Kroger, and you've got to throw that bag of lettuce out in 3 days, that's because it was harvested 2 weeks ago. That's an economic cost to that bag. That bag might be $3 a pound versus $5 a pound for a local bag, but that local bag is going to stay good for about 2 weeks on your shelf. So people need to think about the real economic cost of what they're buying, and look at that price, not as just the sticker price, but the real economic value of what you're buying when you buy local. We've got to look at things like, I'd love to have economic metrics on price per nutritional value, right? I mean, if you're getting a tomato that's here, that's much more nutritious because it was just harvested and it's heirloom variety, it's not bred for transport, it's bred for taste and nutrition, and we could get $1 per nutritional value, then truthfully, you're getting a deal versus a tomato that tastes like paste that comes from California that was bred for transport and really doesn't provide that much nutritional value. So that tomato might be half the price, but it's not providing you with the same value. So there's a lot to local buying and local food that people need to get educated about to make to see the value of really putting your money in a sticker price that might be a little bit higher, but everything that you get for it, both, both directly and indirectly. That's kind of my quick pitch about buying local.
That was great.
Any questions for anybody, from anybody?
My greatest takeaway, this is Kenneth Wilson, County Administrator. My greatest takeaway is all tomatoes aren't created equal. I'm a price sensitive type of guy, and I'm in the produce section looking at a Roma tomato and against a Roma tomato. The locally sourced one was created to taste better, last longer than the one that came from California.
Good.
Hey,
Yeah,
Lisa,
there's a real difference.
I do have one question for you. It's Jim. I'm curious about in your case, the supply chain, but maybe now in this case, specifically the distribution chain. Because I know there have been a number of efforts, for example, for food recycling. And the difficulty has been actually getting the logistics chain and the distribution chain lined up so that it actually worked. Sometimes that's a difficult thing. Have you found that to be at all a problem in your business?
Well, that was kind of our business. So my business, we actually had trucks running. I mean, I'm the typical starter where I had a refrigerated truck that was also my warehouse that I would plug in next to my garage. That's how we started the company. We had to, I think the fallacy is thinking that you can rely on the current distribution channels to do local. We now have been able to put a system together. So what we do is we use different warehouses around the state where the farmer drops off in that warehouse, and we have a lead time. So the difference is if it's not stocked in the warehouse, you're getting something fresh. So if I'm a farmer, I post how much I have available on the website, and a chef will buy it on Sunday night. Monday, I don't harvest until I get a sale. So it's not like the farmer's market where you harvest it, it rains, that crop is dead. I mean, you've got to compost it. You only have to harvest it once it's sold. And so the farmer suddenly has a sale, he harvests it, brings it to our warehouse, and we pack it and put it on the regular distribution truck that has all the non-local stuff. So we've solved it by using the current distribution channels and just leveraging those warehouses and those trucks, if that makes sense. But you've got to be on our online marketplace and vendor portal to be able to leverage that. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. It's been that's been a fascinating thing because I know, geez, I'd say maybe 5 or 7 years ago there was a lot of discussion about the idea that you go online and you could actually buy a field of raspberries that were just ready to be picked, and it made the marketplace here in Columbus so much better because of that.
Great. Yeah. I mean, that's the way it works. Yeah.
I have one last quick question. We're at 2:27, and we do aim to finish and wrap up here at 3:30 today. And I have a couple of acknowledgments, but just kind of like a speed round question for the folks who are left on for our small business owners. What is the one thing that government can do for you right now, and like in one sentence? Let's start with Melissa. One thing.
I think just go back and take a look at just the way the PPP or any money that if this occurs in the future, how it's distributed and how to make it a little bit more equitable, fair in the distribution of money. Because we saw the first round come out, and a lot of the larger companies to access that money. A lot of them gave it back, but it was gone before we could even get an answer. So I would love for the federal government to take a look at that.
One sentence. Like you might be frozen. Nancy.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you real quick.
Just real quick.
One sentence for me.
Sure. I think that our government can help by looking at smaller businesses and their specific needs. I know everyone has a little bit different need. Some of us are operating with local supply chain needs, and just looking at the cost of how those things are going up and how you can help be a voice at the fact that there's a a supply chain issue, and not price gouging for those of us that are, you know, passing on that cost because that's what we're paying for it.
Thank you. Maybelle, you still there? Maybe just listening. Nancy?
Again, my perspective is a little bit different coming from where I am, but increased opportunity and access to capital.
Elise?
I'd like us, Ohio, to do, and this is not Franklin County so much, to do what Kentucky does. Kentucky gives back to buyers of local products 15% cash every trimester. So you're a restaurant, you buy local, you get a 15% check rebate.
Wow. Thank you all. Great suggestions. Much appreciated. It is 2:30. I would just like to, this is our final listening session. I just want to say thank you to the commissioners and their staffs for being with us. County administration, thank you so much. I want to thank Marlise Wicker and Carla Wallace, Economic Development and Planning staff, Jim, Alex Barris, and Michael Salvador, Mr. Clerk, Dean Hindenlang, Juan Torres, Tyler Lowry, and all of you. All thank you so much for being with us. We will be putting out some type of information or following up with you to encapsulate everything that we have learned over these last 3 sessions. In the chat box is information on the small business recovery funding. We want you to take advantage of that. Marlise put her information in the chat box as well. Please reach out to us. To County Administrator Wilson's point, we are preparing. We want to be prepared in case we're going through this again. And if we do, we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to do it better and do it better by you and better by our residents. So we appreciate all of your input. And with that, we will say goodbye and thank you for joining us today.